Okay, let's jump right into this. Did you know a recent survey actually found that a shocking one-third of people making over $250,000 a year are basically living paycheck to paycheck? I mean, how is that even possible, right? Well, it turns out a person can look incredibly rich, pull in a staggering salary, wear literally the most expensive designer clothes, and yet still be completely financially fragile. Meanwhile, you could have another person who looks totally ordinary, lives a super quiet life, and they're the ones actually controlling massive real wealth. So, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're uncovering one of the most fundamentally misunderstood ideas in our entire society when it comes to money and status. We toss around the words rich and wealthy every single day like they mean the exact same thing, but let me tell you, they absolutely do not. And confusing the two, well, that's exactly where so many of our financial problems begin.
So let's kick things off with part one, the great money illusion. It is such a stark juxtaposition when you really look at it. On one hand, we've got a total house of cards, a super high income that's just masking extreme financial fragility. Because looking rich means maintaining an insanely expensive lifestyle, right? But if that primary stream of income ever stops, the entire facade instantly collapses. On the other hand, real wealth might look completely ordinary to you and me. It's a quiet life, but it comes with immense structural control. These folks have built an unshakable foundation, not just some fleeting appearance. You know, society constantly confuses looking successful with actually having that secure foundation. We see so many people spending their entire lives desperately chasing the image of wealth, wanting to look successful right now, before they actually take the time to become secure.
So, when we say rich, what are we actually talking about here? Well, being rich usually means having a high income or just really significant visible spending power. It's fundamentally tied to what the outside world can see. It's all about consumption and public display. It's the lifestyle you can literally point to when someone walks down the street, pulls up to a fancy restaurant in a sports car, or steps out of a first-class flight. But here's the catch. Because it relies entirely on spending money to prove that you have money, being rich is, well, it's an exhausting game to play. It demands constant, never-ending upkeep. Now, wealthy is a completely different ballgame. Wealth means assets, freedom, stability, and the ability to keep your money working for you over the long term. Notice anything interesting about that list? None of those things are visible. Wealth is quiet. It's secure. Honestly, from the outside, it can look incredibly boring. It's the guy driving the faded 10-year-old sedan who just happens to own the entire commercial shopping plaza you parked in. That boring exterior is hiding an incredibly effective engine just humming along in the background, generating revenue whether that person is awake, asleep, or chilling on a beach somewhere.
Which brings us nicely to section two, visible rich versus invisible wealth. Like we said, rich is super easy to spot. It's loud, it's the sports car, the flashy luxury watch, the massive house, the lavish Instagram trips. Rich shows up in public because its entire existence is tied to social display. But wealth is usually completely invisible. It's quietly sitting in index funds, in commercial real estate, in intellectual property, and long-term ownership. Truly wealthy people just don't feel the need to constantly prove their status by showing off. Why? Because their money is doing all the proving for them in the background. What looks wildly impressive to us on the street is very rarely what's actually strong on a financial balance sheet. Moving right along to number three, let's dig into the psychology of spending.
One of the absolute biggest differences here is the underlying motivation behind why we buy things. Rich spending is often trying to communicate status. It's spending to signal, buying expensive stuff just to show success, signal your taste, or prove you belong in some elite social tier. Wealthy spending, on the flip side, serves a specific function. It's spending with purpose. A wealthy person is way more likely to stop and ask, does this purchase actually improve my life, preserve my time, or protect my freedom? Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean wealthy people never buy luxury items. They absolutely do. But the decision is totally intentional. For a wealthy person, buying a premium vehicle might be all about the superior safety ratings and having a quiet cabin on their commute. It's not about making sure the neighbor notices the luxury badge on the grill. For them, luxury is a choice, not a requirement for their identity.
So it really all boils down to this incredible behavioral divide. Rich behavior is like an emotional roller coaster. It's driven by excitement, insecurity, competition, and this desperate eagerness for an immediate reward. They want the results right now so everyone can see them. Wealthy behavior, on the other hand, is ruthlessly disciplined and patient. Building wealth takes time to compound, so patience is literally baked into the entire process. They're totally fine tolerating slow progress. In a world that is just completely obsessed with speed and instant gratification, patience actually becomes a literal financial superpower. Wealth builders are calmer. They aren't rushing to show off their results every single week. They are perfectly content waiting out a brutal bear market or just letting their interest compound silently for decades.
All right, let's get into section 4, income versus real ownership. A person can become rich incredibly quickly, right? Maybe through a high-paying job, a massive corporate bonus, or some crazy viral success. But here's the danger. If that money isn't quickly turned into actual assets, it can disappear just as fast. Income is important, absolutely crucial even. But if most of your income just vanishes into taxes, high expenses, debt, and lifestyle creep, well, then the money is really only passing through. If your paycheck just goes straight out the door to fund a leased lifestyle, let this sink in for a second. You are essentially just a highly paid middleman between your employer and your creditors. No one wants to be that. So, how do you actually fix that? Well, you focus heavily on ownership. Wealthy individuals transform that temporary income into lasting structural power by focusing on things like assets, equity, cash flow, investments, and long-term value. They are constantly asking themselves, what's going to produce income for me even when I stop working? What gives me leverage? What protects me if the economy suddenly tanks? Ownership is what creates your options in life. You could have two people making the exact same massive salary, but the one who actually owns more assets holds all the cards and all the control.
The really crucial point here is a timeless money lesson. Do not mistake display for durability. A person can look incredibly strong, untouchable even, but remain incredibly fragile right beneath the surface. Think about the legendary old money families for a second. They didn't maintain generational wealth by buying gold-plated yachts or getting into flashy spending contests. No way. They maintained it by holding on to land, acquiring solid businesses, completely avoiding unnecessary debt, and just reinvesting quietly. Historically, money has always, eventually, rewarded those who build quietly and think long-term.
Okay, moving to section 5, and we absolutely have to talk about this, the social media trap. There's a saying out there that just perfectly captures our current cultural moment. The modern world is very good at making temporary richness look permanent. Just think about the feeds you scroll through every single day. Social media makes this confusion between rich and wealthy so much worse. We see these hyper-curated luxury lifestyles online 24/7, and it is so incredibly easy to assume that all that visible spending equals real financial success. But guys, it is an illusion. The person you're watching might be renting that exotic car for the afternoon, borrowing money for that luxury travel, or financing designer clothes on a credit card, all while carrying heavy, suffocating financial pressure just off camera, right behind the ring light. You simply cannot judge true wealth by a polished online appearance.
So let's bring it all together in section 6, how to build wealth.
It really all starts by directly challenging yourself with one simple but profound question before you make any major purchase. Am I buying an asset or am I buying a symbol? Take that pause. Really reflect on your true underlying motivation. Are you buying something that's going to create actual options for your future self? Or are you just buying a symbol so you can look successful to a bunch of people who honestly aren't really paying that much attention anyway? First, you have to brutally question if your purchases are building your future or if they're just padding your image. Next, prioritize creating options and freedom above literally everything else. And finally, actively direct your money toward things that actually grow, protect, and free you. And look, I want to be perfectly clear about this. This mental shift isn't about eating nothing but rice and beans or becoming painfully cheap just to save a few pennies. Not at all. It is about radical, intentional capital allocation. It's about giving every single dollar you earn a specific job to do for your future. I want to leave you with this really powerful paradigm shift. Rich is what people see.
Wealth is what money does when nobody is watching. Once you truly understand that difference, you can stop chasing the applause and start building actual freedom. And trust me, that changes absolutely everything. So I've got to ask you, what are you building right now that your money is doing when nobody is watching? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep this lesson in mind because in our next explainer, we're going to dive deep into uncovering why the psychology behind impulse buying is so incredibly powerful and why even the smartest people out there keep spending money on things they absolutely do not need. See you then.